The courtroom fell silent as Judge Marcus delivered his verdict, his voice echoing off the marble walls. "Oi, you have been found guilty of murder in the first degree. You are hereby sentenced to death by hanging. You shall be hanged until you die." The gavel's sharp crack punctuated his words, making several spectators flinch. Oi stood motionless in her chains, her face a mask of indifference. Unlike most condemned prisoners, she shed no tears, made no pleas for mercy. Instead, her cold eyes remained fixed on the judge, calculating and unblinking. The courtroom erupted in whispers, with some observers openly weeping for poor Ofo, who had met such a brutal end at the hands of someone she had trusted. In the front row, Adamu's hands trembled as he struggled to contain his emotions. Ofo had been the love of his life, and her murder at the hands of their closest friend had shattered his world. As the bailiffs led Oi toward the exit, Adamu found himself moving to intercept her, his grief and rage finally boiling over. "How could you?" he demanded, his voice raw with pain. "Your own best friend. Ofo loved you like a sister." His words echoed through the now hushed courtroom. "What kind of heart do you have? Death is too mild a punishment for you. I pray you rot in the hottest part of hell." For the first time since the verdict, Oi's expressionless facade cracked. A sinister smile played at the corners of her mouth as she turned to face Adamu. Her voice, when it came, was soft but filled with venom. "Let me tell you something, Adamu," she whispered, leaning closer despite her chains. "I, Oi, will not die like a chicken. I'll be back, and I'll make you and your family pay for all you have done to me." The threat hung in the air like poison as the guards pulled her away. Adamu stood frozen, watching as they led her through the heavy wooden doors toward the prison transport that would take her to death row. He couldn't shake the chill that ran down his spine. Something in Oi's eyes told him this wasn't over. As the courtroom slowly emptied, Adamu remained rooted to the spot, his mind racing. He thought of his young son Prince, waiting at home, already traumatized by the loss of his mother and the betrayal of their family friend. He would need to be strong for Prince, help him move past this nightmare. But Oi's words echoed in his head, a sinister promise that would haunt his dreams for months to come. The bailiff's gentle touch on his shoulder finally broke his reverie. "Sir, you need to leave now. We're closing the courtroom." Adamu nodded numbly and turned toward the exit, each step heavy with the weight of what had transpired. As he pushed through the courthouse doors into the harsh sunlight, he couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning of a darker chapter in their lives. Behind the iron bars of the women's maximum security prison, Oi wasted no time crafting her next move. Like a spider weaving its web, she carefully selected her companions among the most dangerous inmates on death row. Her first target was Madame Agnes, a notorious poisoner who had eliminated an entire family of 6 without leaving a trace. The aging criminal had influence among both inmates and guards, making her the perfect ally. "You poor dear," Madame Agnes would often say, patting Oi's hand during their yard time. "To think they'd condemn an innocent woman like you." Oi would respond with perfectly timed tears, spinning tales of betrayal and false accusations. She painted herself as the victim of a cruel plot, a woman whose best friend had stolen her man and framed her for murder. Next came Oke, a hardened human trafficker whose network stretched across continents. Despite her diminutive frame, Oke's reputation for brutality preceded her. Then there was Amaka, the ritualist whose dark practices had terrorized 3 states before her capture. These women weren't just criminals, they were architects of chaos, each bringing their own expertise to the table. During the day, Oi played the role of the wronged innocent perfectly. She earned sympathy from prison wardens with her soft-spoken manner and apparent vulnerability. "Keep an eye out for that one," Madame Agnes would tell the other inmates. "Anyone who troubles her answers to me." Under this protection, Oi's influence grew. But it was in the shadows of the prison yard where the real plotting took place. In hushed corners away from prying eyes, the 4 women would gather. Their clandestine meetings raised eyebrows, but none dared interfere with Madame Agnes's group. To casual observers, they looked like any other inmates seeking comfort in numbers. In reality, they were planning something unprecedented. The guards changed shifts at 2 a.m. Oke would whisper, drawing patterns in the dirt with a stick. "The west wall has blind spots in the camera coverage." Amaka's connections with corrupt guards provided crucial intelligence about security protocols, while Madame Agnes's influence kept suspicious eyes turned away from their activities. Oi absorbed every detail, adding her own calculations to their plans. She knew the prison's layout intimately, having spent months studying every corner, every routine, every weakness. But more than escape routes and guard rotations, she focused on what would come after. Her thoughts constantly returned to Adamu and his son Prince, her rage growing with each passing day. When we get out, she told her conspirators, there's enough money waiting to set us all up for life. The promise of wealth sealed their loyalty, but always true currency was revenge. As the weeks turned to months, their plan took shape in the shadows of the prison yard. Every detail was meticulously crafted, every contingency considered. Soon, Oi knew she would fulfill her courtroom promise to Adamu. The thought brought the first real smile to her face since her imprisonment. The night of the prison break arrived with a new moon, casting the prison yard in perfect darkness. Like shadows come to life, Oya and her companions slipped through the carefully mapped blind spots in the security system. Madame Agnes's inside connections had ensured that certain cameras would mysteriously malfunction, while Amaka's bribes had guaranteed a skeleton crew of guards that night. The escape itself was swift and brutal. When an unsuspecting guard stumbled upon them, Oke silenced him with practiced efficiency. The sound of gunfire soon shattered the night silence as other inmates, sensing opportunity, joined the chaos. In the mayhem that followed, Oi and her core group slipped away through a prearranged exit point, disappearing into the darkness while other prisoners served as unwitting decoys. Miles away, Adamu received the news through frantic phone calls from his mother. 35 missed calls lit up his phone screen after a business meeting. There was a jailbreak. His mother's terrified voice trembled through the speaker. Adamu, what if Oi escaped? That woman is evil, and she knows this family too well. His worst fears were confirmed when his brother Kabiru called back Oi escaped. The words hit Adamu like ice water. His first thought was Prince, his son, still at school, vulnerable and unprotected. He raced through traffic like a madman, his heart pounding with each passing second. But fate had other plans. A fallen trailer blocked his path just short of the school, forcing him to abandon his car and run the remaining distance. By the time he reached Prince's classroom, it was too late. His son had disappeared during a routine trip to the bathroom, leaving no trace except his worried best friend Ali, still waiting for his return. As Adamu frantically searched the school grounds, his phone rang, an unknown number. Adamu gripped the phone tighter, tears streaming down his face. I'll get you the money. Just don't hurt him anymore. Hello, my dear husband. Oi's cold voice slithered through the speaker, freezing his blood. In the background, he could hear Prince's terrified whimpers. Your son sends his regards. Please, Oi, Adamu begged, his voice breaking. He's just a little boy. Oi's laugh was hollow and cruel. A little boy. This little boy is the reason I was sentenced to death. This little boy destroyed my life. The sound of a sharp slap and Prince's cry of pain tore through the phone. Now let's talk business. I want half of your estate, in cash. And Adamu, her voice dropped to a dangerous whisper. If you involve the police, I'll send you a video of your son's last moments. Good boy, Oi purred. I'll call with instructions. And remember, I'm watching you. The line went dead, leaving Adamu standing in the empty school hallway, surrounded by concerned teachers, and the weight of his worst nightmare come true. Dawn broke over the abandoned building as Adamu arrived with the heavy bag of cash, his heart thundering in his chest. The desolate location, a maze of half-finished concrete structures, seemed to mock him with its emptiness. For 4 agonizing hours he waited, clutching the bag that contained half his fortune, a small price for his son's life. Unknown to him, police officers positioned themselves strategically around the perimeter, silently taking their positions. Al-Haji Danuma, who had secretly copied down the address, had mobilized an elite tactical unit. They waited, hidden, their weapons trained on every possible exit point. When Oi finally called, her voice dripped with satisfaction. I've been watching you squirm for hours, she taunted. Look to your right. There she stood, holding Prince by the hand, the boy's school uniform torn and dirty, his eyes red from crying. The sight of his son, alive but terrified, made Adamu's knees weak with relief. The money, Oi demanded. Put it down and step back. Adamu complied, placing the bag on the ground with trembling hands. From the shadows, Madame Agnes emerged, her bulky frame moving with surprising agility as she snatched the bag. Go to your father, sweet boy, Oi said with mock kindness. releasing her grip on Prince. As the child ran toward his father's outstretched arms, time seemed to slow down. Adamu could see his son's tears, could almost feel the warmth of his embrace, and then the sharp crack of a gunshot shattered everything. Prince stumbled, a red stain blossoming on his back. No, Adamu's scream tore through the morning air as he caught his falling son. Before Oi could take another shot, the air erupted with gunfire. Police officers emerged from their hiding spots, their commands drowned out by the chaos of bullets. Oi tried to run, but she didn't make it 3 steps before police bullets riddled her body. She fell, her face frozen in a final expression of hatred and surprise. Nearby, Madame Agnes and the others attempted to flee with the money, leading to a fierce gun battle that echoed through abandoned buildings. One by one, the escaped convicts fell, their grand plans ending in a hail of bullets. But Adamu noticed none of this. His world had shrunk to the small, bleeding body in his arms. "Stay with me, Prince," he pleaded, cradling his son as police called for an ambulance. "Please, son, don't leave me." Prince's eyes fluttered, tears mixing with blood as he tried to speak. The wail of approaching sirens filled the air as dawn fully broke over the scene. Officers secured the area, recovering the stolen money and confirming the deaths of Oi and her accomplices. But for Adamu, there was only the desperate race to the hospital, his son's life hanging by a thread, and the haunting question of whether saving his child from one nightmare had only led to another. The steady beep of hospital monitors became Adamu's constant companion as he kept vigil by Prince's bedside. His son lay still, peaceful in his coma, while doctors spoke in hushed tones about bullet trajectories and spinal damage. Each day, Adamu would read Prince's favorite stories, play his beloved cartoons, and hold his tiny hand, searching for any sign of response. "He's a fighter," Mrs. Amina would say, bringing fresh clothes and forcing her son to eat. Just like his father, but as 5 weeks stretched into 6, even her optimistic voice began to waver. The hospital corridors seemed to grow longer, the nights endless, as Adamu watched his son's chest rise and fall in artificial rhythm. Then, on a quiet evening in the 7th week, as sunset painted the hospital room in soft orange light, Prince's fingers twitched. Adamu, half dozing in his chair, nearly missed it. But then came another movement, and slowly, like a butterfly emerging from its cocoon, Prince's eyes fluttered open. "Daddy." The word was barely a whisper, but to Adamu, it was the most beautiful sound he'd ever heard. Recovery was a long road. Prince left the hospital in a wheelchair, his young spirit undimmed, despite the doctor's warnings about possible permanent paralysis. But Prince proved them wrong. With determination that amazed his physiotherapists, he progressed from wheelchair to walker, from walker to crutches, and finally, 10 months after the shooting, took his first unaided steps. Yet shadows lingered. Prince would wake screaming from nightmares, and certain sounds, like fireworks or car backfires, would send him into panic attacks. Adamu watched his son jump as shadows, saw how the local school's familiar corridors now held terror instead of joy. The ghosts of Ofer's murder and Oi's revenge haunted every corner of their lives. One evening, after tucking Prince into bed, Adamu made his decision. "Mom," he said to Mrs. Amina, who had become their rock through the recovery, "Prince and I need to leave the country. We need a fresh start, somewhere without these memories." Mrs. Amina's eyes filled with tears, but she nodded. "I understand, my son. Sometimes healing needs distance." 2 weeks later, father and son stood at the airport, their lives packed into 4 suitcases. Mrs. Amina hugged them both, whispering prayers for their safety. As they walked toward their gate, Prince tugged at his father's hand. "Daddy, will we be happy in our new home?" he asked, his eyes bright with both uncertainty and hope. Adamu knelt down, meeting his son's gaze. "Yes, my boy, we will. We have each other, and that's all that matters." As their plane lifted into the clouds, Prince pressed his face against the window, watching their old life shrink away. Beside him, Adamu felt a weight lift from his shoulders. They had lost much, a wife, a mother, their sense of security, but they had survived. Now, somewhere across the ocean, a new chapter awaited them, one unmarked by tragedy and filled with possibility. "I love you, Daddy," Prince said softly, slipping his small hand into his father's. "I love you too, son," Adamu replied, squeezing gently. "Always."